Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to come from the second chapter in the book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes are the most mature musings of Solomon, and throughout the book, the writer leaves the reader with the unmistakable and palpable impression that he is overwhelmed by an awareness of his own mortality. So these are his musings late in life. Now, Solomon, by any objective measure, could have lived a satisfactory life. He was uniquely gifted and the recipient of divine grace to perhaps an unprecedented extent amongst the human race. Yet he reduces everything that seems significant to a quality of nothingness and meaninglessness. And towards the end of the first chapter, he bemoans on the futility of wisdom. Now, wisdom in some sense can add meaning to our life because it helps us grasp and understand and lay hold and experience the meaning of life. Yet, for all the wisdom in the world, now if our wisdom is in worldly wisdom, it cannot answer our most pressing questions or solve our most palpable dilemmas. And we get the impression that Solomon's dilemma prompted him to experiment, and we're going to keep that in mind as we read the passages. The first one of which reads, "I said in my heart, 'Come now, let me try you with rejoicing, and find out what is good.' But see, that too was futile. I said of laughter, 'It is madness,' and of rejoicing, 'What does it do?'" So partying, frivolity, pleasure, the pursuit of immediate gratification, laughing and rejoicing may seem spectacular in the moment, but they have no eternal or lasting value in themselves. So he's reducing them to fleeting something that passes with the wind on earth, and it's a flicker in mortality, and it's of no lasting satisfaction. "I searched in my heart how to stimulate my body with wine, while guiding my heart with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, until I could see what was good for the sons of men, to do under the heavens all the days of their life." So even though he has a superabundance of wisdom, his wisdom compels him to empathize with or put himself, think foolishly. Maybe there's something that fools know that the wise don't. And there's a saying where ignorance is bliss, 'tis folly to be wise, but that was a luxury he could not enjoy as the king. And but he eventually lays the comparison between wisdom and folly as the chapter progresses. So, "And I made my works great. I built myself houses. I planted vineyards for myself. I made gardens and parks for myself, and I planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made pools of water for myself, to water them from a plantation of growing trees." So he's just encapsulating some of his activities as king. He built houses. He built the temple in Jerusalem, the original one, and also built a magnificent palace for himself, which consumed about 16 years' time, whereas the temple took 7 years. And but the thing we notice is that he built for himself. So the life where you pursue yourself as the ultimate source of gratification and satisfaction and consider your own needs, interests, and wants and desires preeminent, you're going to be in for a rude awakening because your quest or possibility for satisfaction is going to be obliterated. You are imprisoning yourself to the chain of self. "I bought male and female servants, and I came to have sons of the household. Also, I had greater possessions of herds and flocks than any who were before me in Jerusalem." So this is no idle statement. This is a completely factual one. His wealth was unprecedented, and archaeological excavation suggests that the biblical tabulations of the influx of gold which went into his Jerusalem by year were not exaggerated. And but he's now, owning male and female servants was something the upper class did throughout antiquity, and but his possessions and agricultural items were exceedingly greater than any who came before him. "I also gathered for myself silver and gold, and the treasures of kings and of the provinces, I provided male and female singers for myself, and the pleasures of men, a woman, and women. So once more, his kingly duties consisted in largely enriching the nation state under his jurisdiction, and Israel did prosper under his wise rule. And and he had more than one wife. By the 11th chapter of 1 Kings, we read that he had acquired 700 wives and also had a concubine, a harem of 300 concubines. Now, the 700 wives almost, in most cases, he would not indulge in sex with them. They were more alliances. They were the formation of alliances through dynastic marriages but he overextended himself and succumbed to idolatry. Then I became great and increased more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also, my wisdom remained with me. So even the pursuit of all this accumulation of wealth, he had not forsaken wisdom, and he had not lost the ability to be wise and discerning, and it's all ultimately what enabled him to be so successful. And all that my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart rejoiced in all my labors, and this was my portion from all my good labors. So he did not spare himself from sensual indulgences. He did live in a palace and a court, and he would have had more above average temptations that we cannot relate to. But when I looked on all the works that my hands had done, and on the labor which I had toiled, see, all was futile, and feeding on wind, and there was no gain under the sun. So even though these stable durations which outlive him, they're not going to outlast him for much longer in the scheme of eternity. It's comparable to a passing in wind in that it's just a flicker of time. And so he's questioning the futility of human effort and labor, because at the end of his life, what does it get you? You can't bring anything you labor for in this life into the next. And I turned myself to look at wisdom in madness and folly. For what would the man do who comes after the king, but what already has been done? So he had a reasonable cause for concern with the quality of successor which he was leaving Jerusalem with, and Rehoboam was not the man that his father was, and in fact his foolishness and brashness resulted in the permanent splinter of the kingdom into northern kingdom of Israel and southern kingdom of Judah. Then I saw that wisdom is better than folly, as light is better than darkness. So even though wisdom can't prevent death, it can add meaning and significance to life. So it's not to exalt wisdom on too high a pedestal. It cannot prevent death, but life is better lived with wisdom. And we know things that the foolish can never even dream. The wise one's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And I also knew that one event befalls them all. So the wise is level-headed, and he's walking with a compass towards direction and purpose. The fool walks in darkness, chasing their immediate gratifications and carnal lust. And what is the event that befalls them all but death? Death is the great equalizer. It comes to us all equally, and it makes us all equal as it comes. So there's no such thing as being deader than anyone else in degree. Once you're dead, and that's it. And and I said in my heart, as the event of fools, even so it befalls me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said of my heart, this also is futile. So even though he had grasp and access to all this wisdom, he diminished its significance in that it could not prevent him death. The wise person dies the same as the fool, same as the rich, same as the poor. It is the great equalizer. No one can escape death, but we do have the promise of the resurrection. For there is no more lasting remembrance of the wise than of the fool, since in the days to come all is forgotten. And how does a wise man die? With the fool. So all the wisdom in the world, once more, cannot prevent death, but it can add meaning to life if exercised in a prudent fashion. And the fleeting and flickering and ephemeral nature of anything, all the works of the world are alluded to once more. And the wise and the fool are once more equally destined for the same fated doom. And I hated life because the works that was done under the sun was evil on me, for all is futile and feeding on wind. So these observations and experimentations and dilemmas and searching compel him to hatred of life. He's sick of it all, he's seen it all, he knows it all, and he wants nothing to do with it. And you get the impression that he would take the sweet release of death if given the option. And I hated all my labor in which I had toiled under the sun, because I leave it to a man who would come after me. Once more, Rehoboam was not a successor to look forward to, and the unworthiness of his successor predominates several sections in Ecclesiastes. And who knows whether he is wise or foolish? Yet he shall rule over all my labor in which I toiled, and in which I have shown myself wise under the sun. That too is futile. So this is the dilemma of hereditary monarchs. They they spent their entire lives building on the achievements of their forebears and want to bequeath something to their progeny. And Solomon is questioning the wisdom of that, or the necessity even, since it's all everything's going to vanish in the storm of history. So I turned my heart and despaired of all the labor in which I had toiled under the sun. So this is hitting him like a ton of bricks at the end of his life. He's overwhelmed by the sense of meaninglessness for which he has exerted so much energy in the previous 50 plus years of his life. Solomon died at the age of 59. For a man might labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, yet he leaves his heritage to a man who has not labored for it. That too is futile and a great evil. So this is almost a commentary on the outside looking in of the foolishness of, or the meaninglessness of accumulating an inheritance to pass on to your progeny. For what does a man get for all his labor and strain of his heart with which he has toiled under the sun? Now, the whole reason we work is it's unnecessary evil to prevent it's a necessary evil to prevent unnecessary evils, and he's saying that there's nothing you can gain or acquire through work that it will be ultimate worthy or ultimate satisfaction. For all his days are sufferings, and his work grievous. Even in the night his heart takes no rest. That too is futile. So the average life is defined by struggle, and suffering is the fact of life, and work is rarely pleasant, and there should be rest for the toil, but he cannot find it even though he's physically sleeping. It's his heart has no rest. A man could do no better but to eat and drink and enjoy himself in his labor. That too, I saw, was from the hand of Elohim. So he's implicitly endorsing what is the Epicurean philosophy, which is to eat, drink, and be merry, and for tomorrow we shall die. And in some sense, the gifts that we can possess and claim and utilize in creation are the Creator's gift to us, and he wants us to enjoy them, but he doesn't want us to neglect the provider of the gifts and value the gift over the giver. For he who eats or who finds enjoyment about him, for he gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to a man who is good in his eyes. But to the sinner he gives the task of gathering and collecting, to give to the good before Elohim. That too is futile and feeding on wind. So all these previous verses, until rather recently, Elohim wasn't even mentioned. As I said, he assumes the vantage point of what might be properly termed rational agnostic. So he's acknowledging the fact that wisdom is a gift from God, and and the sinner determines their own outcome, and the whole futility of their rat race cycled life. And so it can be meaningless, but the moral of the story of Ecclesiastes is that the quest for joy in any alternate sort of source of satisfaction outside of Elohim is insustainable and bound to disappoint. But with Elohim in the forefront of our hearts and at the forefront of our minds, then we can lay hold of the blessings and the meaning of those blessings. And that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. Tune in next time. Bye-bye.